Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Today's review is Black Site to Delta Green the role-playing game by Octodream Publishing. In this video I'll be covering the second scenario in the book, Ghati. Okay, first a bit of history. Funded by 2016's successful Kickstarter, Ghati is a 36-page scenario that is available as a PDF for print on demand and was later collected in this volume. There will be spoilers from this point on, so stop watching now if you intend to play this. The first thing we are greeted with is a basic rundown of the operation. The agents are a group of soldiers, intelligence officers, federal agents or contractors in Afghanistan that are bound for the US Army Forward Operating Base Turner, or FOB, in the remote mountainous Paktika province, south of the Hindu Kush Mountains near Pakistan. They have a list of verbal orders from their case officer that involve a clandestine CIA officer called Tim Ellis. Unfortunately for Tim, he's been in Delta Green too long and his life has fallen apart. His marriage has failed, and the other agents that he knew were killed or crippled. His control officer saw his deterioration and recommended that he was taken out of action and put under psychological evaluation, but due to the scarcity of agents in Afghanistan, he was instead moved to somewhere quiet, or so they thought. They arranged for him to be moved to FOB Turner and to watch for Taliban activity and investigate the rumours of a haunted village called Ghati to find out information, report it back and take no other action. As the weeks passed, Ellis grew obsessed with Ghati, and finally he destroyed his notes and set out on foot to find the village. He has subsequently come face to face with the old power there and is lost. The writers are quick to point out that there are real-world places called Ghati and they are unrelated to the fiction in this scenario. The agent's orders are clearly defined. Uncover Ellis's location and retrieve him without attracting further attention. Do not let him be captured and interrogated by the Taliban. Do not send any information over any communication channels. They can request extraction via ordinary methods from FOB Turner, and the normal standing orders also apply. Deal with the situation, collect intelligence, save lives, end the threat, whatever it is. Next, it details FOB Turner. The base has been in the process of standing down for months. Originally built for around 1,000 men, it now contains around 60 US soldiers organised into 2 platoons led by Captain Byers and 2 lieutenants. Also, around 120 Afghan National Army or ANA soldiers have been moved into the other side of the base and are being prepped and trained by the American troops. A ceasefire with the Taliban has been in effect for the past few months, until this week. It gives information on Captain Byers and what he can tell the agent about Ellis. From his information, nobody saw him leave the base. The region suffers from electromagnetic interference, supposedly from magnetic ore deposits, and the base is covered by security cameras. Byers can show the agents footage of Ellis pacing outside his hut at 22:58, then interference for around a minute, and then he is gone. Agents can request items from Byers with the right roles, and he has 2 mine-resistant ambush-protected, or MRAP trucks on standby for their use, although it will take the right roles to allow the agents to take one out on its own. They always drive in pairs for protection. The next section covers what Ellis left behind. His hut has not been entered since he was discovered missing and has been kept under guard. It's almost empty and smells like bleach. A number of clues can be garnered from what Ellis has inadvertently left behind. His laptop has been shot several times, but information can be recovered from the hard drive with the right roles. The players can discover that Ellis was investigating the existence of a village called Ghati, or Black Valley. It is supposedly in the shadow of Varjita Mountain, which is around 40 kilometres away, well outside the area in which the US are allowed to operate. It becomes clear reading his notes that he was depressed and suicidal due to his isolation, marriage collapse and estrangement from his son, and alcoholism, and the unnatural had wore him down. The agents can discover that the people of Ghati aren't Muslim, Christian or Hindu, and it is claimed that they worship an old dragon god said to be mightier than Allah. They are also rumoured to do terrible things when there is no moon in front of the golden idol. They're shunned by everyone. The last new moon was 10 days ago. Ellis also investigated old Victorian British sources, more particularly those of Colonel Arthur Blythe Merriweather, whose writings said that they would chant a mantra in a language unrelated to Urdu or Pashto, that translated as "Death awakens the sleeper." Investigations into Blythe Merriweather indicate that he spent years in Broadmoor Criminal Lunatic Asylum. It's also clear from reading Ellis's notes that he became obsessed with seeing Ghati for himself and decided to go it alone. Should the floor of the hut be examined, it's clear that it was recently scrubbed with bleach, and should any forensic technique using blue light or similar be used, words painted in finger blood can be discovered, spelling out both Ghati and "Death awakens the sleeper." The next section details the Americans at the base. They're frustrated and dispirited as America has held a presence here for 10 years, clearing out the Taliban and then watching them return as soon as they move on. Basically, nothing has changed. They have a feeling that they have been dying for the benefit of one-upmanship of politicians back home. They spend their time doing anything to stave off boredom, counting down the days until they can go home. They have little to do with the ANA troops, and they generally disapprove of some of the things the ANA get up to. The agents can question the soldiers here, but after investigations it becomes clear that two soldiers, specialists Bryant and Booker, talk to Ellis more than anyone. The players can talk to Bryant and Booker and find two buddies who look out for each other. With the right persuasive techniques they can find out that they generally fraternise with him due to boredom and also the alcohol he managed to smuggle into the base. They can give some information on Ellis and the local area and can tell the agents about Ellis's strange dreams where he heard unseen droning noises that weren't sounds and voices that weren't voices. An agent with human to 50% or greater realises that Bryant is holding back on something. If a rapport is formed with him, he tells them that Ellis didn't believe in the one God of Judeo-Christian traditions and that they were surrounded by gods at all times. He wanted to see them just once before he died, something he was creepily sincere about. Should the agents question the Afghans on the base, they find out that Ghati is a vague rumour, a bogeyman kind of place. Should they speak with the local interpreter, Yassim Rahimi, he will play dumb initially, but if pressed, he will say that he wants no part of the cursed and blasphemous place. The people in the nearest village, Kulaj Kel, are generally friendly to both troops and the investigators. They have no ties to the Taliban and are ignorant of Ellis's disappearance. They deny any knowledge of Ghati, but Bryant will tell them that this is nonsense as he has heard them mention it. If they are pressed on it, they initially pretend to not understand, but will ultimately admit that they are fearful. A few of their men have occasionally joined fighters who stand against Ghati. The village is hard to find and the men camp in the mountains waiting for it to reappear. We also have details on what happens if the agents decide to use drones to find Ghati. After the investigations, the agents should eventually decide to try and find Ghati themselves. Captain Byers sends them in an MRAP with Bryant, Booker and the translator Yassim. It gives us stats here for all the pertinent characters, and eventually the agents should head out into the mountains to look for Ghati themselves. After about 3 hours, they are 30 kilometres west when they are ambushed by the Taliban. The ambush is carefully detailed, step by step, in a really cinematic fashion that's really well done, and it has a deadliness that is suited to its surroundings. Depending on the outcome of this and the look of the players, the agents may need to continue on foot to Ghati. Rules are given for both eventualities. Also included is information on questioning any Taliban captives. After this, it moves on to Varjita Mountain. Compasses and GPS don't work properly here, and successful navigation can be difficult. Eventually, they should reach the Black Valley and the Cursed Village. What they find is surprising. The village is in a state of decay. The local foliage is ugly and diseased by some sort of unknown fungus, and the valley is unsettlingly quiet, and sick-looking goats wander around rickety pens. Should the players enter the village, they see that each doorway has writing carved around it, which is recognisable to those with the appropriate skills as a debased form of Hindi. They describe an ancient priest who lived under the ground forever and knows the way to the stars and all the worlds in the future. In the middle of the village is a little temple containing the golden dragon statue that they've heard mentioned. Anybody with the right education will realise it's of the ancient sun god, Zun. The villagers make their presence known eventually. They're friendly to newcomers, and the village leader is a woman called Badar Bahan, which means elder sister to those who speak Hindi or Urdu, and she is more than happy to answer the agent's questions. If asked about Ellis, she will advise that he arrived in Ghati a few days ago, dehydrated and sick, but seeking wisdom. They took him to the hillside temple to recover. If asked about the door carvings, they will advise that they revere a sleeping god called Baba Jan, who resides in the hillside temple. If asked about the idol, they are amused. To the trained eye, they are clearly crazy. The next step is to visit the temple. The villagers are more than happy to take them up to the temple, and when they journey up the hillside, they find a crack in the limestone with steps leading down. As they descend the steps, they notice that the stone on either side changes to an unknown green-black substance that is cold and damp and draws the oil from any fingers that touch it. The guides, who stopped at the entrance, eventually follow the agents down, determined to sneak up on them. Eventually, the agents will come across the shunned temple. The walls and floor have strange sanity-sapping geometries and are covered in odd hieroglyphics that depict an unknown myth cycle of some kind of living things. The air is acrid and smells of decay. Ultimately, they will find Ellis, naked and kneeling in the darkness before a gigantic angular stone slab. An alertness roll will unfortunately show the agents what is laying atop this slab. A vast grey-black-green mass streaked with white veins that is made up of impossible curves and angles. Ellis has had his sanity well and truly shredded and is trying to awaken the slumbering thing in front of him. He has a knife and is covered in blood from cuts that he has made. This is when the action begins. Ellis lunges towards the agents with the dagger, and the villagers who followed them down make their appearance. After the first human dies, the thing stirs. When a second human dies, 13 glistening green eyes open and it speaks. The god priest, as it is known, is an ancient thing that has lain here in a catatonic state due to the stars not being right. They exert a strange force over the region, and the village of Ghati was built to be near it and to feel the power of its impossible thoughts. When it speaks, horror hits the agents, an overwhelming, babbling psychic shout that can cause the unlucky who fail their sand rolls to throw fits, attack their friends and even try to devour them. All electronics are frazzled, and the only thing left for them to do is flee. The scenario then shifts into a chase of sorts, with the agents fleeing to the exit in the dark, and it's really all about luck at this point. If the players escape the temple, for the god priest won't pursue them outside its boundaries, they then have the insane villagers to deal with as they revel in the delight of savagery and slaughter. One ensues as a running battle to get out of the village, and there are even rules for a siege should the players hole themselves up there. The aftermath is just as hopeless as the pursuit. The players have a chance of catching a disease if they stayed in the village for too long, and an airstrike to destroy it is doomed to fail. Agents that want to return to Ghati to wipe it out upon returning find that it is nowhere to be seen. After this, we have some really well realised NPCs for use in the scenario. Ghati has some really good points and really bad ones. The setup and investigative side is really well thought out, and the ambush is something that you can easily picture happening. The village itself is sufficiently creepy to be memorable, but once the players reach the temple, it tails off sharply in my eyes. What begins as something that the players can feel they have a modicum of influence over turns into running away screaming in the dark. And while I understand the point of this, i.e. the players have superior firepower and superior training that is in all actuality useless, I felt it lost its subtlety in the final chase sequence. Another issue here is the lethality. There is every chance that half the team could be dead before the finale due to the ambush, and with no communication channels open, there is no way for new players to get into the game unless they are a villager or a soldier, and a lot of it is down to sheer luck rather than good decision making. Additionally, the ultimate fate of Ellis is not really addressed in a meaningful fashion, and the whole ending kind of left me deflated. The art throughout really nice, although, as with all the other Delta Green scenarios, a few character portraits would have done it a lot of good, and you should get a good few sessions worth of material here if you're careful and build the tension, but I felt the ultimate realisation of what was happening didn't live up to what preceded it. I gave it a 6 out of 10. Okay, that concludes part 2 of Black Sites. Part 3 in the series will be The Last Equation.